Hello everybody and welcome to this Jovial Juggling workshop with makermeet.ie. So my name is Chris Reyna and we're going to do a few things that I hope would be fun and might even get you out in the sun. I would love to actually get out in the sun at the moment, but it's still a little bit wet from yesterday's rain here where I am in Killarney. So wherever you are, I hope it's very sunny and things like that. Now, just before we get started, just to give you a few moments of who we are a company and we provide STEAM workshops to schools and libraries and places all around the country. And STEAM is an acronym or stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. So you might wonder how juggling fits into perhaps any of those categories. Well, it certainly fits into maths because, funny enough, juggling is actually all about maths, really. So in terms of that, we won't be doing any maths today, but we will just be doing the juggling. But really, it is actually all about maths. And I will explain a little bit, but you won't have to do any maths, don't worry. So all you're going to need for the workshop is just something to juggle with. You don't need lots of them. You probably need maybe tennis balls or something around that size. Tennis balls are usually quite good. And I'm going to show you a few things as well that we use in terms of juggling and things like that. So also, it's worth noting that if you do any other kinds of sports, of any kind at all, juggling is an excellent way to teach yourself or even to practice hand-to-eye coordination. So you will see when we get started that even as when I juggle, I don't always look at my hands because firstly, I'm doing this for a very long time, but also just because I know, I can sense where things are going to be. Also, if you're a gamer of any kind at all, it's excellent to, again, get your hand-eye coordination skills down if you're playing FPS games or first-person shooter games and things like that. Then juggling is an excellent way to do that. Also, let's be honest about it, while it can be a little bit frustrating when you're starting out, if things are falling to the ground using gravity, which is science, then when you get over that, juggling is an excellent way to be able to do something very simple that I think is a lot of fun and also gets you out in the air. Now, I'm inside doing it today, unfortunately, but certainly when the summer is here, even the winter is here, doing it outdoors is an excellent way to go. So let's get started. So gather your materials. Just another thing to say as well is that if you have any questions or anything like that, throw them into the chat on YouTube and we'll see them. We'll check them from time to time. I won't be able to see them all the time, obviously, because I'm giving the workshop. But when I see something pop up, I will be able to respond to it in just a moment anyway. So gather your materials in terms of your tennis balls and things like that, and let's get started. Now, okay, so here we are, okay? Now, I have my juggling equipment over here on a table next to me. So just before we start, I'm going to show you a couple of things. As I mentioned to you, certainly tennis balls, okay, are an excellent way, okay, to get started. They're very cheap, things like that, okay? So in terms of that, you should probably start with 2. Okay, I have 3 here, but probably if you just start with 2, it's fine. When we start, I'm actually going to show you how to start with just 1. And I know that's going to seem very, very simple to you, but starting with just 1 ball is exactly the correct way to begin to juggle. If you don't have tennis balls, there are lots of other ones. So I have ones like these, okay? So these are just bouncy balls, very bouncy balls. I picked up in a pound shop. I think I picked those up in a pound shop and they were very, very cheap as well. And again, they're about the right size and about the right weight. The kinds of balls that you don't want to juggle are, do you know the kind of balls that you get in a playpen or in the big places, the big play area places like Palladium and places like that, where you jump into a big pit of balls. Those balls are really, really light and wouldn't really be suitable for juggling. They're just too light. In fact, and everybody wouldn't necessarily know this, but the heavier the balls are, the easier it is to juggle them. Okay, light balls don't really work very well because they bounce all over the place and they don't come down very fast. So when you throw a ball, you want to catch it in your hand like that. Whereas if you throw a very light ball, the wind can even catch it and take it away, stuff like that. Okay. Now the other things you could use, and I have a set of these here, are ones like this. So these are really nice ones. I picked these up in Flying Tiger. Okay, and they're just lovely. They're a really good weight and they're a really good size for my hands. Okay, they're a really good size for my hands, as you can see. And I picked these up for 50 cents each in Flying Tiger. So for 150, I have 3 really marvelous juggling balls like that. Okay, so the ones I'm going to use today are probably going to be these. So these are my juggling balls. These are kind of professional juggling balls. The only difference between these and any other ones is probably the size. They're a tiny little bit bigger. Okay, and the other thing is it's kind of hard to describe without actually picking them up in your own hand and seeing, but they're rubber. And while they aren't sticky, certainly they are, the rubber helps them kind of stick to your hand, even though the ball itself is not a sticky object. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started, because you're going to want to practice some things for a little bit. Okay, because you're not going to get it straight away. You definitely won't get it straight away. So just to get started, I'll put one down, and I know that a lot of people think that they know how to juggle, and I'm going to show you how that works. Okay, so most people say, oh yes, I know how to juggle. And what they do is they do this. So they start with one ball in each hand. Now remember, this is not the correct way to do it. They throw one ball up in the air and then they pass the other ball over. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw this red ball in the air. It's going to go up in the air, and as it's up in the air, they hand the blue one over. Now really, that's not the best way to do it. So I'll show you what I mean. The red ball goes up and they hand it over like that. So one goes up and they hand it over. Now that's okay when you do 2, but when you start to try and do 3, it just doesn't work. So in order for you to begin juggling, I just want you to start with one ball, just the one. Okay, now the correct way to juggle is start with one ball in one hand. It doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed. You're going to throw that ball up in the air, and that ball is going to look like this. It's going to go up and it's going to come down and hopefully land in your other hand. Now, the second thing you need to do is the same thing with your other hand. You're going to throw it up in the air. It's going to go up and land in that hand. So, at no point do your hands come together like this. Okay? Your hands never come together. Or at least they might come together, but that's later on when you're more experienced and practiced in juggling. So your hands don't come together when you're starting out. You should throw, it goes up in the air and lands in your other hand. So if you imagine, it creates kind of a half circle, kind of an arc. And at the top of that half circle, there, right here, that's what's called the apex. That's the top of the circle, okay, the apex. And when we move on to 2 balls in a few minutes, okay, you'll see why that's important. But for the moment, I just want you to start with just the one. All I want you to do is throw that up in the air and catch it in your other hand, just like this. Throw it up, catch. Throw it up, catch. And I want you to continue to do that. Now, I don't want you to cheat. I don't want you to do this, because that's not the same thing. The ball has to go up in the air and create kind of a half of an arc. Okay, so it has to go up like that. Now, the other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to throw it so high that it goes all the way up and up and up and up and up, and you can't see where it is anymore. So you can't see the ball, and I can't see the ball because I'm holding it all the way up over my head. It's too high. So that ball should only ever go about as far as there. So if I look directly at you, I can still see where the ball is out of what's called my peripheral vision. And the same is true when it goes to the side. So if I'm looking straight ahead, I can still see it until about there. Now I can't see that ball anymore. So that's as far as it should go. And the same is true if I go to the other side. Okay, so you should always be able to look straight ahead, but still see the ball out of the corner of your eye. Okay, so just continue to practice throwing, nice gentle throws, up in the air and catch. And you will, of course, drop the ball from time to time. And that's okay. It's okay to drop the ball. That's part of juggling and part of learning how to juggle. Do I ever drop the ball? Yes, I do, all the time, because gravity exists. Because gravity exists, whenever we don't quite catch it correctly, and it might roll off the edge of our hand, it will fall to the ground. But that's, again, okay. So just keep practicing this. Keep practicing throwing one up in the air. I normally recommend about 20 throws before you get comfortable. So you have to throw it and catch it 20 times, okay, before you're ready to move on to the next bit. Okay, so that's 1, 2, all the way up to 20. Okay, so you keep throwing all the way up to 20. All right, and you count that all the way up to 20. And if you miss by accident once, you have to start over. You can't continue on with your numbers from there. You have to start over. But again, it's practice. It's always about practice. The only reason I can juggle as good as I can, which is not a perfection by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a professional juggler, okay? I'm an okay juggler, but I know how to teach juggling very well, okay? And the trick is practice. That's the only trick there is. Just keep doing that and practicing. Just keep practicing. Start with 1. And I know everybody's going to want to go to 2 and then 3 straight away, really quick. But just be a little bit patient, and then 2 and 3 will start to come. I promise you they'll start to come, okay? So just do 1, keep going, and just practice just the 1, okay? Now, for any of you that might be already ready to go for 2, you've done this 20 times without dropping it, without falling over or anything like that. I'm going to go on to 2. Now, before I do 2, okay, I need to show you how that's going to work. Okay, so I'll get a second ball here. Okay, so I have 1 red one and 1 blue one. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to throw the blue one first, and that ball is going to go up in the air. Now, if you remember what I said about the apex, that's here. When that ball gets to there, that's the apex of when I throw. And then I'm going to throw the red one. Now, what was going to happen, interestingly, is the blue one is going to come down and the red one is going to start to go up. They're going to miss each other. The blue one's going to end up here, pardon me, and the red one's going to end up here. And then the red one's going to come down on the other side. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to throw them at the same time. If you throw them at the same time, what's going to happen is they're both going to go up in the air. They're going to meet at the apex exactly. They're going to hit each other, and they're just going to fall right down in the middle. Okay? So you just want to throw one, wait until it gets to the apex, or 12 o'clock, if you want to think of it in terms of a clock. Wait until it gets to 12 o'clock, and then throw the other, and they will miss each other. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to throw the blue one first, and then I'm going to throw the red one. Now don't you do this, just watch for a moment before you try. So again, patience. Juggling is just practice and patience. So I'll throw the blue one first and then the red one. Ready? Here we go. Now I'll throw the red one and then the blue one. Now the blue one and the red one. And you can continue that. So every time one of the balls comes to 12 o'clock or the apex, that's when you throw the other one. So if I throw the red one first, it's going to come to the apex. When it gets there, I'll throw the blue one. They're going to pass each other in the air. The blue one gets to the apex and starts to come down, and I throw the red one, and so on. So that looks like this. I'll do the red one first, and then the blue. Okay. So at no point, okay, as you can see, at no point do any of the balls pass over this way, okay? They never pass this way, all right? Again, there are a couple of tricks that you can do where you do pass the balls, but just when you're learning to juggle first, learn this way and then go back to doing it that way, okay? I might show you some of those, okay? So, red, blue, blue, red. Blue, red again. So try starting with either hand. Don't always, if you're right-handed, start with your right hand, or if you're left-handed, start with your left hand. So almost everybody has a little bit of a weaker hand. Maybe the hand that you write with is your strong hand. Don't always start with your strong hand. Try to start sometimes with your other hand, okay? And this will teach you, and here's a word that you may not have heard before, but this juggling will partially teach you how to be ambidextrous. So dexterous is like being able to use both of your hands equally, and ambidextrous is using both of your hands equally, okay? So juggling will help you with that. So don't always start with, I'm right-handed, so this is my right hand, so I'm going to try to not start with my right hand, and I'll start with my left hand. And I'll start with my left hand again. Okay? And so on. Okay? So, what I want you to do now is just practice that a little bit. Okay? So, again, you don't have to go to 2 immediately. Just use 1 to start with. Okay? And I can tell you very definitely that I often, if I'm practicing juggling, I'll actually go back to just doing 1. Is it a little bit boring? Yeah, sometimes it is. It's a little bit boring. But it also helps keep me practiced for what I'm doing. Okay? And once you start to get the rhythm of juggling like that, throwing it up and catching, throwing it up and catching, throwing it up and catching, then you can start to do kind of fun things. So you might throw it up, catch it, throw it up, and grab it out of the air, like that. Okay, so there's all different kinds of things that you can do with just the 1 ball. Okay, just the 1. All right. So I've showed you how to juggle 1, and then we've moved to 2. Okay, so clearly the next step is going to go to 3. Now, the difficulty with 3, even the difficulty with 2 in a way, is that you don't throw all the balls at the same time. And this is one of those things that it's a bit like riding a bike, in the way that it's very hard to ride a bike slowly. It's easy to ride a bike fast, because the faster the bike moves, the more balanced it is, and it doesn't wobble like that. It will stay perfectly straight when it's moving fast. The same is true with juggling. It's very hard to show you how to juggle slowly. It's very hard to throw a ball slowly. I have to throw it at the speed that it goes. I can't slow it down in slow motion. I could, but not live. I'd have to slow it down on a video in slow motion. Okay, so when I throw it, it's going to go at that speed. So I want you to think about this for just a minute. When you do 2 balls and 3 balls, okay, you only ever throw 1 ball at a time. And not only that, there is only ever 1 ball in the air at any time. Now, sometimes, depending on how fast you're doing it, that may not look true, or it may not even be true. Sometimes there's more than 1. But if I slow it down and show you, hopefully you'll get an idea of what I mean. So I'm going to go to 3 balls, okay? Now, I don't want you to do anything yet. Don't try it yet. In just a moment, you can try, okay? But I just want to show you first with 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a blue in my left hand and a red in my right hand. Now, you can see I'm also holding the green, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to throw the green, all right? I'm only going to throw the red and the blue. And that's how I want you to practice. Practice holding 1 ball in your hand and throwing the other one. And just to give you a little idea, and this is a little bit easier for me because I have big hands, so the size of the balls is appropriate to the size of your hands, okay? So if you have a little bit smaller hands than me, use a bit smaller balls, okay? So what I'm actually doing is I'm holding, okay, the green ball in 2 of my fingers, and I'm pressing that against the palm of my hand. And then I'm holding the red ball in 3 fingers, my thumb and other 2 fingers, okay? So you can see that's how I'm holding those 2. And of course the blue is just in my hand, okay? So I'm going to start by holding the green and throwing the red and the blue. And I'm not going to throw the green. And that's how I want you to practice as well, okay? So I'll show you. You can watch. So red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. Whoop! And there's gravity again, okay? So as I said, always the balls will fall, okay? And sometimes when they do, you just have to go and pick them up. It's not a problem. Let me grab the red one and we can go from there. Now, excellent, there we go. It didn't go far, fortunately, okay? So I just want you to practice the red and the blue, or in your case, whichever 2 you have, but just hold on to 1, and we'll add that in a moment. But just get used to throwing the 2, okay? Just get used to throwing the 2 while you're holding the other one, because it will just teach your brain to accept that there's something else in your hand, all right? Now, I'm sure that you're all chomping at the bit and ready to go for 3. I know that you want to move ahead very quickly, but again, patience and practice, okay? So I will do 3, okay? And I'll show you how to do 3. If you remember, what I said was there's only ever 1 ball in the air at any time. And you only ever throw 1 ball at any time. So I'll try to slow this down. It's difficult to slow it down to let you see what happens, but I will try to slow it down as much as I can so that you can see that there's always 1 ball in each of my hands. So my advice to you is focus on one of the colors. Doesn't matter what color you want. Focus on the blue, focus on the red, or focus on the green. Okay, and watch how that ball moves. Okay, so here we go. Now, okay, and I'm kind of, I won't say cheating, okay, and this is what it looks like fast, right? But, so when it goes fast, it just looks like all the balls, okay, are just flying around the place, but they're not. It's really only one in the air at any one time. And I'm only throwing one, whoop, and there we go again. Okay, so you slow down too much, just like you do on a bike. If you slow down too much, the bike will fall over. In juggling, if you slow down too much, the balls will fall. So let me fetch the green one, and we have the green one back. Okay, so that's 3. Now you'll notice at no point again did I pass over side to side any balls. Okay, I never passed over. All right, so at this point, this is now all about practice for you. Okay, so you just need to practice. And I can give you a couple of tips and tricks on how to practice your juggling. So, firstly, one of the things is always go back to 1. If you get to 2 and you're just finding it too much, it's too complicated, go back to 1. Okay, the more you do 1 and become comfortable with 1, the better you'll be able to do 2. And that is also true when you're transitioning from 2 to 3. Okay, if you're finding 2 okay, but 3 is just too hard, it's too complicated, go back to 2. The more you do 2, then you'll be able to do comfortable with 3. Okay. The other thing that always happens is, and it's kind of hard to actually do this again, but I'll try and show you, is when people juggle, sometimes people will often juggle, and so I suppose I'm going to show you this in a second, but I'm juggling side to side, but oftentimes what happens is the balls move out a little bit, like that. So when you first start off juggling, frequently the balls do this, until suddenly you're doing this, and you're chasing the balls, and suddenly they're running away from you entirely, like that. Okay, and you start chasing them across the room. So if that happens to you, juggle facing a wall. And I don't have a wall here to show you. I have a curtain behind me, but that is not a solid wall, so the balls wouldn't bounce off it. But if you juggle facing a wall, the ball will leave your hand, it will bounce off the wall and come back to your other hand. Okay, so stand just about, not quite a full arm's length away, but about a half an arm's length away. So if the wall was there, okay, and I'll turn to the side so you can see that a little bit better, about half an arm's length away from your elbow to the tip of your finger. That's about as far away from the wall as you'd want to juggle. Okay, and when you're juggling, the balls will bounce off the wall and come back to your hand. So I'll juggle 1, and then actually I'm going to throw it over there. I put it in my pocket here. So I'll juggle 1 first, sideways, so you can see how that happens. I'll use the green here. And then I'll do 2, and then I'll do 3. I suppose I'll do it from my right side. It's probably a little bit easier so you can see what it looks like from the side. So the ball hopefully won't go too far forward. So when I juggle from the side, it just looks like that. So you can see I'm going side to side. Okay, and if I was a professional juggler, my hands wouldn't move so much, and I wouldn't make so many tiny little mistakes. Okay, wouldn't make so many tiny little mistakes. So 2, okay, so 2 looks like this. Okay, so I have a green and a blue. Okay, green and blue. So 2 from the side looks like this. Okay, and 3 looks like this. Okay, so we have red, blue, and green from the side. And it's quite funny, but when you start to learn to juggle and you get into the juggling, it can become very relaxing to juggle. It's a marvelous thing to juggle, very, very relaxing, because you know that you're going to catch the balls, and it just becomes almost hypnotic to juggle, almost hypnotic. Now, okay, so that's what it looks like from the side. Okay, that's what it looks like from the side. So you need to practice that for a little bit now. Okay, again, Just do one, start with one, and then work your way up to two, and then work your way up to three. And take your time. It will take some time. I would probably recommend giving it about 10 to 20 minutes every day. If you practice for 10 to 20 minutes juggling every day, after a week, you'll start to feel absolutely confident that you can do it. And after about 2 weeks, you'll be able to juggle without even thinking about it. You'll just be able to pick up the balls and go like that. Start juggling, okay? All right. Because it only takes that much practice. So it's not really a lot of practice that you need to do to start some juggling. So I'd like you to practice that for a little bit now. Again, one ball first. Once you're happy with one, you move up to two. Once you're happy with two, you move up to three. Okay. So I'm going to get something else just to show you while you're practicing that. I'm going to grab a drink of water here first. Now, so I have those three balls, okay, and they fit in my hand very nicely. But you can juggle lots of different kinds of things, not just juggling balls or tennis balls or anything like that. So I also have some other ones here. These don't fit so nicely into my hand because they're much bigger. Now they look the same, okay, but they are not. So they are a little bit bigger, okay? And believe it or not, okay, those are used for different kinds of tricks. Okay, so you would use different kinds of tricks juggle. Okay, and we could even put one in the middle there and juggle the other two. So another question that I would often get when juggling, actually speaking of questions, let me just check the feed. Oh, somebody has sent me something and said, has it already started? Yes, it has. No. So apologies. Now I go back there. Okay, so just answering someone that somebody had in the chat. I apologize. That was a little while ago that came up. I didn't check it in time. So the questions I often get are, okay, I've done one. I can do that. Now I've done two. I can do that pretty confidently. Okay, I can kind of do three. Well, that's okay. Just practice three some more. But then the next question always is, what about four? What about five? What about six? Can you juggle 1,000 balls? No, I can't. Okay, I don't know of anybody that can juggle 1,000. I do know people that can juggle, what I know personally, people that can juggle 6 to 7 balls. And I have certainly seen people that can juggle even more than that. Now, that's really hard and takes years of practice. But let me tell you a trick, okay? So if you want to move on yourself and practice, okay? Juggling one ball, I showed you, is when you throw it back and forth, okay? Now, when you juggle two, I showed you throwing those back and forth as well. But when you are actually doing the juggling, not just practicing for three, okay, it looks like this. So let me take two, okay? So one ball is an odd number. So your odd numbers are 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? Those are odd numbers. The opposite of those are even numbers. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and so on and so on and so on, okay, are even numbers. So when you juggle an odd number, the balls cross back and forth. But when you juggle an even number, the balls actually just go up and down. But it looks like they cross back and forth. Now, let me give you an example of that. And I'm not terribly good at juggling even numbers or big numbers, but I will give it a try. So let's take ones that are roughly the same size. So I have 4. Okay, so I have a red, blue, green, and a purple one. Okay, so when you do 3, okay, which is generally where people start, okay, when you do 3, the balls cross over. So I suggest you watch the red one for the moment. And the red goes to my right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Okay. But when you do 4, okay, and I'm not suggesting that you practice this yet, okay, get comfortable with 1, 2, or 3 first. But I'll show you as a demonstration. When you do 4, okay, what happens is it looks like this. So you throw 1 up in the air in one hand. Okay, so you don't actually throw the ball back and forth. And then you do the same with your other hand. Now this left hand is my weak hand, and I'm not sure how good I'm going to be at doing this. Hop, hop, hop. And, okay, so you do 1 in each hand, and then you just do it at the same time. Now, be prepared, because gravity is going to enter into this scenario. I absolutely promise you, because I know I'm not great at juggling 4, but I'll give it a go. Are you ready? Here we go. And the balls kind of went everywhere. Okay, I managed to save 3, and the blue one is right there in front of me as well. Okay, but that's what 4 looks like. When you go to 5, if you were to do 5, and I can't do 5, but if you were to go to 5, they would cross back and forth again. And if you would do 6, then 6 would be 3 in each hand up in the air really fast. And if I can't do 5, I definitely cannot do 6. Okay, so that's just when you get to the higher numbers and you get better at juggling. Do you do all of those? Okay, that's when you do all of those. Now, it might be worth showing you a little trick, because once you do this, which I'm sure you've been practicing very hard while I'm doing all the talking, okay, once you do that and you get comfortable with that, then that's when you have to learn, say by putting one hand behind your back, that's when you learn to try and do 2 in one hand. And that can be a little bit harder than it looks. So it can go 2 ways. So it can either go up and down, or it can go in a circle where the balls swap like that. So I'll show you both. So that's up and down, and that's around in a circle. And as you can see, it's hard to keep it straight. There we go. Around in a circle, like that. Okay, and when you can do that, then you can do some very interesting tricks. So one of the tricks, let's see, which one will we pick? We could pick the magnetic ball. Okay, so sometimes one of your juggling balls can be magnetic. Let me show you. So at the moment I'm just juggling, but suddenly what might happen, oh gosh, that nearly ran away from me. What might happen is the red might suddenly get stuck to the blue. Okay, so the red might get stuck to the blue, or it might get stuck to the green, or it might go back to being stuck to the blue, if you see what's happening. So all I'm doing is I'm moving one hand up and down in time with the other. It just looks like they're stuck together, but they're not. Another trick that you could do, let's see, is sometimes one of the balls decides to disappear out of the whole juggling equation, and what happens is it starts to spin on its own. So sometimes, let's take the red one again, because the red one is easy to watch. So sometimes the ball starts to just spin around entirely on its own. And once again, all I'm doing is moving my left hand independently like that, while I'm doing this with my right hand. And you put the two of them together, and you have a juggling trick. Okay, so those are just some of the tricks that you can do with juggling. So that's been a lot of throwing and practicing and testing and figuring out how stuff works. So probably for the kind of the rest of the workshop, I'm just going to show you a couple of other things that are kind of considered juggling as well, or within the realm of juggling. And these are not all of the things. There are so many different things that you can do that are considered juggling as well. There's things like cigar boxes. There's different kinds of things that you can juggle. People will juggle knives. People will juggle clubs. People will juggle all kinds of things. Okay, so one of those, as I say, are clubs. So these are juggling clubs. They aren't, as many people say, bats. They're not bats. They're not for hitting anything at all, especially because of the way they're made. If you hit something with this, even another juggling ball, these will break. Okay, because they're not made of solid wood. So this is plastic, and there is a thin stick of wood inside of it, which you will break, and then the club will be no good to you. Okay, so in terms of juggling clubs, all right, and this is much easier to show you from the side, okay, that's what they look like from the side. And you flip them up and they spin around from the top back to you. So I'm going to flick it like this, and it's going to spin around and land in my hand. Okay, so I'm going to flick it up in the air and catch it. Okay, so that's how you throw a juggling club, except it isn't. So everyone will hold it down here, okay, at the bottom like that. But really, that's probably not the best place to do it, because when you hold it down here, there's an awful lot of wobble when you throw it. Okay, so you might throw it like that and there's a little bit of wobble back and forth. However, if I hold it here or close to that, sometimes people hold it here, sometimes people hold it here, depending on wherever they find easiest. Okay, then you can flick it and there's no wobble at all. Plus, it's a little bit faster, but you have to get used to doing that, to kind of pulling your wrist down in order to flick it around. Okay, and as you can see, there's almost no movement and no wobble, and I can continue to do that as much as I want. So the pattern is exactly the same as it is for juggling. So when you're juggling balls, I'll use these for the moment, okay? As you know, you throw one to one side, and then one over, and one over, and over, and over. And they go back and forth like that. Okay, so when you do juggling clubs, or when you juggle juggling clubs, it's the same thing. I'll use a blue one this time. So the club goes from one hand to the other hand, and the way that works is you flick it, but rather than absolutely straight, it kind of goes at a little angle. Just a tiny little angle is all it needs to get to this hand. Okay, so I flick it and it goes to that hand, and so on. Okay, and the same thing happens when you have two. Okay, so when you have two, all right, the same thing happens. You flick one up in the air and it spins, and then you flick the other one and catch it. So I'm going to do from my right hand first, like that. Okay, I'll do from my left hand. And so on. Okay, so then you can do 3 clubs, of which I have 3 here. Okay, and the same thing happens. Now, in this case, I'm going to start, I'll show you that once again, by holding 2. Now, the grip is a little bit different. Okay, I'm going to hold them in my hand, and one, I'll show you that way actually, so one is over top of the other. So the green one here, that's the one I'm going to flick first. So the handle of the green one, right here, is over top of the handle of the yellow one. Okay, is over top of the handle of the yellow one, because that's the one I'm going to throw first. And then you just throw the other one and the other one. And I know I'm making that sound really easy, that you just throw it. But you don't move on to clubs until you can do balls first. Because after you can do balls very confidently, then you move on to juggling clubs. Okay, then you move on to clubs, and you'll find that juggling clubs takes even less practice to get the clubs right. Okay, it takes even less practice. And of course, there's lots of other things that you can juggle too. I showed you different items and different kinds of balls that you can juggle, but it really doesn't matter. I have here, for instance, in fact, I'll use these instead, just because it's a bit more fun. So I have a bottle cap. That's the bottle cap off my water. And I have two cables. I have two cables. So you can juggle those as well. Now, this is actually harder, especially for me, because all of these items are very light. Okay, all of these are very light. But it's just a demonstration to show you that you don't need to always just juggle balls or clubs. There's lots of other objects that you can juggle as well. So one of the other things in juggling that you can do that's a lot of fun, but you do need to be outdoors for this sort of thing. Now, I'm indoors and I'm going to show you, but I've adapted them a little bit because I have a little bit of space around me here, okay? But really, you should always do this outdoors. And those are called poi. And that kind of rhymes if you've ever seen or heard of a fish that's called a koi fish. These are poi with a P. And they come from Australia, New Zealand area. And all they are, very simply, I have two of them here, are these. Okay, so it looks like this. So in here, okay, as you can see, taped up because of the use they've had over the years, is a tennis ball. So there's a tennis ball in there. On that tennis ball is just some string. Okay, just like that, just some string on the tennis ball. And then wrapped around the tennis ball is this kind of brightly colored fabric, which looks very nice. And at the end, and you wouldn't have to do this bit if you wanted to make your own, but at the end are just two little finger straps, okay? But this is called a poi, and I have two of them, but this is one at the moment. So the idea is that you put your fingers in the finger straps, and always the cord comes out the top of your hand, not the palm of your hand, but the top of your hand, like that. Okay, it always comes out the top. And you spin these around, but you don't let go. So just to show you, as you can see, I'm spinning it back and forth. And I've shortened the cord here all the way down, okay, so that I won't crash into too many things, hopefully. Okay, but you just spin it around. And that's a very pleasant thing to do. Okay, very easy when you spin it this way. Okay, and this is kind of something that you can kind of do slowly, a little bit slowly anyway. When you spin it around. Now, when you get that, well, you can start to do it at the side. So I'm going to do it at the side of my body and spin it around like this. But just like juggling, okay, where the balls or the clubs or anything that you're going to juggle go from one hand to the other hand, you can also do the same with a poi. So if I step back into the middle here a little bit, then I can cross my hand over and do it on that side. And I can bring my hand back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until I'm doing it like this. And even this way, I'm sure looking at me head on like that with the camera is probably a little bit difficult to see. So what I'll do is I'll turn to the side and you'll be able to see it probably a little bit better, like that. Okay, and I might even back up a little bit. Yes, that's probably not bad. So I'm going back and forth with my arm across the body. And that is one poi. But of course, you can do two. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you remember the big complicated word, which was ambidextrous, which means that you can use both hands very, very well, okay? You'll probably still have one side of your hand or your body, whether you're left or right-handed, that is stronger, but you can certainly use both hands. So I now have two poi here, okay? I have two poi. And just to give you a very quick demonstration, I will do both side to side. So one on my left and one on my right. Okay. And I can cross over like that. Again, I'll turn to my side so you can probably see this a little bit better. But I will show you this first, which is just doing them both, and I'm doing them both, and as you can see, my hands are together. but the chords are not tangling. And that's because of timing. So the way I'm doing this, you will notice, maybe if I can slow down, although it's hard to slow down, but you might notice that at all times, much like juggling, okay, one of the ends of the poi is up at the top and one is down at the bottom. And if I keep up that pattern, it just means that they won't ever tangle. Because as soon as they just start to maybe begin to tangle, they don't even touch, but as soon as they start to begin to tangle, they untangle. And that's brilliant, okay, and that's really good. So let me show you from the side what it looks like. And that's just what it looks like there. And again, outdoors, definitely the place to do this, okay? Always the place to do this. And don't worry, if you make yourself poi, you should definitely use a tennis ball, because at some point you will bop yourself in the back of the head with one of these, and that will hurt. So if I can kind of do side to side here, it's not easy to see, but try to go side to side there. There we go. Okay, like that. Okay, so those are poi, okay, and that's something else that's considered part of juggling. And there's lots of other things as well too. So there's things called devil sticks, okay. There's things called cigar boxes. There's all different kinds of things that you can use in juggling depending on how you do it. But almost always the start is definitely back to the very basics of using, and in fact, let's grab those, tennis balls. I started off juggling using tennis balls, and that's where you should start too, okay? They're just about the right size and the right weight, and they generally won't hurt if you get hit by them, or even if you throw them, okay? Yes, I know you're probably wondering what I did there. Actually, I used the other ones because they're a little bit better for that sort of thing. So there's also a form of juggling called contact juggling. I suspect many of you won't have seen a movie, an old movie, called Labyrinth, going back. If you haven't seen this movie, go and have a look at it. There's an excellent example of contact juggling in Labyrinth. Plus, one of my favorite singers, David Bowie, is in it, and he's excellent. So you should always go and have a look at that. It's a tiny bit scary at some points, but it's not too bad. There's a lot of puppets in it, which is a lot of fun. So contact juggling, okay, is when you generally use one, but not always. Sometimes you use two balls. And rather than throwing the ball, the idea of contact is that the ball stays on your hands. And all you do is you can swap it back and forth, the back of your hand. People who are very, very good at this can roll it up their arm, down their other arm into their other hand. I'm not very good at that, so I can't do that. You will see other examples of that, of course, in football, where football players or even basketball players can roll the ball from one arm onto the other arm and things like that. And you can do that in contact juggling as well too. But contact juggling is where the ball never leaves your body, okay? So you can do things like that and roll it up and catch it and all different types of things like that. So those are just other examples of how to juggle and things like that, okay? But as I've said many times already today, start with just one ball, okay? Just use the one, practice, okay? Lots of practice. You won't get it immediately, and that's okay. Just take some time. The summer, there's still half of the summer left, okay? So 10 minutes every day. After a week, I think you will be very good. Probably after 2 weeks, I think you will be absolutely confident to juggle. And then you can start to look up other videos and things like that on YouTube for different tips and tricks and ways to juggle. So let me swap back over here just for a moment. Now, okay, just to thank you all very much for, oops, here we go, we're going to go to that one. So yeah, thank you all very much for joining our Jovial Juggling workshop. I hope you had fun doing it, and I hope you practice and I hope to see lots of you juggling around very soon. If you would like any more information, please feel free to reach out to me. You can find us chris@makermeet.ie. Go to our website, www.makermeet.ie. Send us an email. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and lots of places like that, and we often post videos and things like that. And as always, if you have any questions now, please throw that into the chat, and hopefully I can answer some questions for you. So if I throw it open there, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw it in. Otherwise, put that ball over there so it doesn't roll away. So otherwise, we like to kind of finish our workshops always with a phrase that we've kind of adopted, which is just to engage, to explore, and to, as always, enjoy what you're doing. It's very important to always try and enjoy the things you do, but also just to explore the world around you. And you've just explored some juggling with me today. And then always to engage with your friends, engage with your family, things like that. So. So we have a message there. Caden, you're very welcome. We would love, by the way, to see any pictures or anything. You don't have to post them publicly if you don't want to. Feel free to send them to us. We won't certainly would never post anything without anybody's permission, but we'd love to see some pictures of you juggling, or even a short wee little video or anything like that. And as I say, you can post it on Facebook, or you can just send it directly to us if you want as well, because we enjoy seeing things like that, and we enjoy seeing people do this stuff that we try to show you. And hopefully now, with perhaps restrictions being lifted a little bit, that we will be back in person very soon to be into your schools come September, when September starts, and we can do lots of different projects and things like that. Juggling is but one of the things we do. We do a lot of different workshops in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So we do coding, we do engineering projects, we do scientific projects, we the odd time blow things up, which is always a bit of fun, but never dangerous. And we certainly do lots of electronics projects and things like that as well. So from me, I have been Chris Reyna. I hope you've enjoyed the workshop, and we'll speak again very soon. As always, engage, explore, and enjoy. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.